Hello folks, welcome to El Canal Channel Jose. Today we're going to show you or give you an idea how to replace a lower ball joint on a 91 to a 94 Toyota Tercel. The ball joint connects the lower control arm to the spindle. These ball joints, there's one on the passenger side and one on the driver's side on the lowest point, and we're going to show you how to replace it. The tools that we're going to be using on this is a 19 millimeter wrench, open wrench, and a 14 millimeter socket to remove the two bottom nuts and the one bolt from the bottom. What we recommend is that if you have a sway bar on your car, you want to lift the car from both sides and put jack stands on both sides, so the pressure of one wheel when it's on the ground is not forcing the other suspension side to have pressure on it. So you want to lift it because we have a sway bar connected to it, so we want to have less stress on the suspension when we're doing this. So with that said, we're going to show you how we do it and then or give you an idea how you can do it. So let's get started. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to have to remove the sway bar or take off the whole place of the sway bar off this bolt, so the pressure from the other side of the suspension doesn't hold this control arm. So when we take it off, we're able to push it down once we undo our ball joint, and you'll see what we mean by that control arm when it needs to push down to come off from the spindle. So this part goes into the spindle, this part goes into the control arm. So if your Tercel has a sway bar, you want to take off that sway bar link connector to the control arm so there's no pressure from one side to the other, so you can push the control arm down when you need to remove the ball joint. But if it doesn't have it, don't worry about this step. We're just showing you if you have that control arm link connected to the sway bar. So we're gonna take that off, and so that way we don't have pressure. And to remove the nut is a 12 millimeter if it's the original setup. So we have to use a 12 millimeter deep socket and hold it from the bottom with a 12 millimeter wrench as well. Or you can use vice grips right in the between the control arm and the sway bar. There's a place where you can grab it, and then you can undo the bottom nut. So this is our ball joint right here. This is the attachment point to the control arm. There's the two nuts and the bolt, 14 millimeter, and there's the 19 millimeter nut on the top with the pin. So we gotta take that off first. Before you start taking anything off, take that nut off. I would recommend to take that 19 millimeter off. It has a pin, so we gotta pull that off. It's kind of hard to show you from the top how it is, but we're gonna show you exactly how that's sitting right there outside, so you get an idea. Okay folks, so we were talking about the safety pin. So to take this guy off, we're doing it out here because it was hard to show you in there, but what you have to do is you have to get this hook off from the nut. So once it's unhooked, you can pull like this and it comes off. That's if you got this kind of safety pin. You gotta look in there, see how it falls in the groove. It comes through the hole, then once you push it in, it hooks itself into the nut, and then that's how you put it on. So this is how it's sitting right now, like this. This is the top nut right here where I'm grabbing, and then it goes into the spindle, and then these right there, the two nuts attached to those studs, and the bolt goes into the hole. So take the top nut off first. So now that we have loosened the top nut, the ball joint to the spindle, we have loosened that up. We can take these two 14 millimeter nuts and this bolt off, so the ball joint will be loose from the control arm, and then we have to hit it right here to loosen it from the spindle. So let's take these off first. Okay folks, so we have taken off the two 14 millimeter nuts off, the bolt 14 millimeter as well. So now what we have is that we have loosened the top 19 millimeter nut. So we have to get that ball joint to come loose from the spindle. So for that we might have to tap it or hit it with a hammer right on the side. So we can't take the nut completely off because it's hitting the boot on the drive shaft. So we're sitting like this right now. This is the one that goes right inside there, and the nut bolts right in the top. So we gotta hit it here so it comes loose. So in the beginning we took off the sway bar link connector off, so we have this control arm ready to be pushed down, so the ball joint comes off from here, and then that will just slide down and it won't pull on the control arm because it's loose. So the sway bar will continue pulling if you keep it bolt on to the control arm. But right now we just need to push down the control arm, and it should be coming out from here and coming out from there. So now what we have to do, now that we have it off from the control arm, we can hit it right at the spindle where it joins, because the vibration is gonna let it loose so we can come up. It's been there for so long that it's so wedged in, so we gotta tap it on the side and so it loosens itself. Okay folks, so one thing I had to do is I had to put the ball joint back into the control arm, and I tightened it down with one bolt, and then I had to hit it really hard here on the spindle so it will loosen from the wedge, because these ball joints, they had a tampered area when it goes into it's a funnel, and it goes into the spindle, and as you tighten it, it wedges itself. So for after so many years or time, it stays there and it seized. So you have to hit it really hard. So I had to hit it really hard but for that I had to tighten it down, because otherwise this will be bouncing back and forth. So you wanna, through the process I learned that. So I attach it back to the control arm so I could hit it here really hard and it wouldn't bounce off. So now what we can do is we take this hardware off, and then we can start pushing the ball joint down and take off the nut. So, and then we can take it off from the control arm. So this is the old ball joint, and we're gonna be using the new ball joint that doesn't require this nut. It has a Teflon nut that goes on there that we're gonna be using. So this is the part that got stuck into the spindle, and we had to hit it hard on the spindle so it will loosen it, and now we can just start sliding this back in there. Now we have put that 19 millimeter nut on top. It's too loose. We put that 14 millimeter nuts and the 14 millimeter bolt in the bottom for the bolt joint, and then we tighten everything down. So now that we have tightened all the bolts and the nuts and the bolt for the ball joint, This is a Teflon nut, doesn't require a safety pin because that's how it came. And now we start putting the sway bar link kit if you had to take that off to push the control arm down. But if you didn't, don't worry about that. Just so we're gonna put that back on, so then we're almost done with the process. Well folks, hopefully this video was useful and gave you an idea how to replace a lower ball joint on a Toyota Tercel. This applies for a Paseo. It's pretty simple. You don't need special tools. The hardest part is going to be loosening that nut from the spindle that connects the ball joint to the spindle. That nut, you need to take it off before you start adding the WD-40. Otherwise, you'll spin the whole structure in the spindle. Another thing, if you got a sway bar, you want to take the connecting link from the control arm to the sway bar, so you don't start pushing down and then you got the sway bar pulling. So you want to take that off. That's if you got a sway bar connected to it. If you don't have a sway bar, don't worry about that. So we use a simple basic tools, a ratchet, a 19mm wrench for the nut, 14mm socket for the lower two nuts in that bolt, and then for the sway bar we use a 12mm wrench and socket. That's if you have it. And then we use a ball peen hammer to hit the side of the spindle so it would spit the ball joint, and some WD-40. But other than that, it's pretty simple. And if you like this video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here en el canal de Chano Jose.